And I would like to welcome you, along with Pastor Chris Carrasco, who's back there. We would like to welcome you to Kings Grant Presbyterian Church's very first classical concert since I started working here December 2022. After we acquired this beautiful Steinway piano last year, the first person that I wanted to ask to come perform was my doctoral piano professor from James Madison University, Dr. Eric Ruple. As noted on the back of your program, he is a Steinway artist, but with a much more extensive background than will fit on the piece of paper. He has influenced thousands of students over the course of his career and brought musical elation to so many more through his expertise, expression, and love for his craft. Under his direction, I was pushed to my limits in piano. Many times playing pieces I had no idea I could accomplish, but he believed in me and saw the possibilities while being encouraging and patient. I'm certain he treats all of his students with the same respect and care while raising the bar extremely high. Dr. Ruple is a Beethoven specialist, and I took a course with him where he would, if anybody's a music major, you'll probably recognize this. This was a doctoral course, and he would play a recording starting somewhere in the middle of a Beethoven sonata, and we would have to name which opus number, which movement, what key it was, and if it had a special name like the Pathétique. That was hard. Just going to say it's really hard. He's also a member of the Liszt Society, and as you will hear, he has a connection to the music of Liszt that is incredibly moving. There's a reason that this man is called a Steinway artist. After the concert, please stay for a reception across the hall, a lovely reception that our care team has put together. Thank you very much. And consider making a donation to the Judeo-Christian Outreach Center. There's a basket in the middle, but you can also use the QR code if you do electronics. This organization helps our homeless neighbors in Virginia Beach. And without further ado, please welcome Dr. Eric Ruple to the piano. And turn your cell phones off. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. That's got to be the sweetest introduction I've ever had. I don't know if I've had thousands of students. That makes me a little bit older than I really am. But Tanya is one that I will not forget. She was wonderful. She has been so proud to be here at this church, and when she told me that they had this piano, she showed me a picture, and I thought, wow, what a beautiful piano. 7-foot Steinway is kind of the dream. And she was so proud of it, and then I got to play on it yesterday, and I can only say in the spirit of today's news, you all made a overtime goal-winning gold medal with this piano. So it's a real pleasure to be here. We tried this a month ago, then we tried it a week later, and then we thought, well, the last week of February there won't be a storm. So at this point I only have to get home. So anyway, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to try not to talk too much, but I want to say a few things about the music that I'm going to play. I want to start with this very well-known sonata of Beethoven called the Pathétique. How many of you know this by hearing it? Oh, that's a lot of people. That's too bad. Because, when Beethoven wrote it, it was supposed to be a huge shock. And so I hope you'll get some of that shock to the system. He did not name it Pathétique. His publisher did. The publisher said, wow, this has got such extreme emotion in it. It's pathétique in terms of kind of a tragic nature to it. And he made extremes of dynamics, loud and soft. He had extremes of accents in the wrong places, irregular phrases, all kinds of things. And it was supposed to be very, almost upsetting to the crowd who was waiting for their nice Mozart or Haydn sonata that had nice balance and expectations. He also had a lot of extremes in terms of tempo within the piece. In fact, this is one of the first sonatas that starts with a slow opening section. Very famous slow opening section, which probably you do know. And so it starts with that, and then it goes into a fast section. And I don't call it an introduction because there's some controversy about what to do after you play that slow opening section. And I'm choosing, for the sake of shock value, if we can get that today, to, when I take the repeat, to go all the way back to the slow section again, because I think he wanted that sort of jarring fast, slow throughout the piece. So after that, if you're still not too upset, the second movement, he wrote one of the most beautiful melodies that he ever wrote. He was not known for melodies, but this one was a beauty. And then finally, the third movement is just a really great rondo. I love playing it. So I hope you enjoy this nice little gentle classic sonata by Beethoven. Next, we move to a whole different time period, Romantic era. About, I think, maybe 50 years later in the music of Franz Liszt. And the reason why I say 50 years later is that why that's important is because that's approximately when the next piece was written, and the piano, which was much smaller in Beethoven's day, by the time Liszt wrote this music, it's more like the piano we have today. So he uses the wide range, even more than Beethoven in some ways. He uses the resonance of the strings. It's just a more modern sound. And Liszt would, just like Beethoven did, would have loved a piano this size and this kind of strength in a way. So, Liszt wrote these pieces like he often did. He wrote them first for a singer with the words, then he changed it and turned it into a piano piece, and then later on, he rewrote the piano piece into the version we're hearing today, and then he later rewrote the vocal piece. And that's something he did a lot. He did a lot of rewriting, changing things, and this is the most famous one. I put in the program the text of the songs, and if you read those texts, you're probably thinking that they're kind of over the top. And they really are over the top, but I did a little bit of reading about Petrarch, the person who wrote these sonnets. And it happens that Petrarch was from the 14th century, he was a philosopher and writer, and also he was in going through the process of becoming a priest. So he was very, very much into the religious aspect of life. Well, what happened was apparently he was in his early 20s, and he saw somewhere, maybe in church or maybe in the streets, saw this woman, and he immediately fell in love with her. She was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. Actually, I don't know if it was a girl or a woman, but anyway, he fell in love to the extent that he immediately left the priesthood. So, and he kept this love for years. That might explain a little bit about the over-the-topness of these sonnets. Oh, I have to mention that he never spoke to her. That through an intermediary, he professed his love, but she was married and she rejected him. So maybe that has something to do with the passion that he couldn't quench. Oh, and I should also mention, she died fairly soon after that. He lived another 40, 50 years. He never lost that love for her in his whole life. So he was a little bit crazy. But these pieces just show so much passion for that time period that they've become well known. I will say that when Liszt wrote these pieces for piano, they're part of a larger set that he wrote in his travels around the world. These happen to be Italy, which is another maybe Olympia-related theme. The second one in particular has become very well known for pianists and for audiences because that's the most extreme of the three. And maybe that, is hot and cold and at war and at peace. And that, again, shows his passion, and that I think that's reflected in the music. But I hope that you'll enjoy these as much as I do, the Petrarch sonnets.
Okay, folks, this is your 1.5-minute warning to find your seats. We're not blinking the lights. While you're finding your seats, I'm kind of curious how many piano students we might actually have here. Can you raise your hand if you are taking lessons or have taken lessons recently? Good. Awesome, awesome. That's great. Okay, we'll get started. Thank you.
Thanks for coming back. As Tanya kind of intimated, I've been teaching for a long time, and this is my last year at James Madison University. I'm retiring after this year, and as I reflect on that, I think that there's so much music that has been really, really a pleasure. But one of the things I've enjoyed doing there is teaching kind of regularly some kind of piano literature course. And my own favorites tend to go towards Beethoven, it's a big surprise, Liszt, big surprise, and most music in the 20th and 21st century. I really love that. And that's been a pleasure because I learned so much every class. So this is a series of 3 pieces all by women composers and all women of color. And at the same time, I'm both embarrassed that I didn't know much about this music at all for most of my years teaching. But I'm also really happy to be able to make it right a little bit. And so I think these are fantastic pieces. They're all kind of different, but I want to explain a little bit about each one, maybe going backwards. Margaret Bonds, who wrote the Troubled Water, she was an African-American woman who was one of the first African-Americans who really succeeded in music higher education. She went to Northwestern, ended up on the East Coast, did a lot of really good things. She certainly dealt with a high degree of discrimination through her life. And this was always a challenge for her, but she really overcame much of that. She wrote this piece in 1967, and it's the name of the spiritual, well, I have to say that one of her goals was to take the African American spiritual, which those had been around since slave days, and to turn them into music for piano and the concert hall. A pretty big jump. And so this piece is one of the results of her work. And you hear this now more and more than you did even 5-10 years ago. So I'm happy to be able to play it. It was, as I said, it was written in 1967, and it was a troubled time. And I think you hear kind of underneath the water and the beautiful melody, you hear some, tumult in there. There's some trouble underneath. And she captured that very well, and I think that, we're there again today. So, unfortunately, trouble is with us all the time, and so I think it's appropriate today as well. The second piece that I'm playing, that was the third, and then the second piece is by a woman named, I knew this was going to happen, I was going to blank, Tanya Leon. Tanya Leon is from Cuba, still alive, and she was one of the first originating members of the Dance Theater of Harlem. She came there as their composer in residence. Still alive. And this piece, now you might say, well, what's the title mean? Tumbao. Well, as I read, it's a form of salsa, a Cuban kind of a certain rhythmic pattern or something. I can't tell you much more about that. But anyway, it's from Cuba originally. She's from Cuba, and that is where Tumbao comes from. And if you think that maybe she's not that well known, if you happen to be a person who watches or has watched in the past the Kennedy Center Honors that happened in December usually. Well, in 2022, several people got honored. There was Gladys Knight, the band U2 with Bono, they were honored. Amy Grant was honored that year. George Clooney was honored that year. And this little tiny black woman named Tanya Leon. And then you'll listen to this and you'll think, well, you can't dance to that. But if you go back on YouTube and you watch that, you'll see some of those dancers from Dance Theater of Harlem. And guess what? They played this piece. It's very short. And you'll hear this being played as they dance. I need to go watch that again because I can't believe anybody can dance to it, but they're professionals. Okay. All right, and then the first piece is something that's kind of become a favorite of mine. Another African descent woman. Gabriela Ortiz is from Mexico originally, and she's been teaching in the United States. I think she's a composer in residence at Carnegie Hall now. She just in 2025 won 3 Grammys. So these are prominent people. Now, the title of this, Sui Muy Ki. You say, well, what does that mean? And I would say, I don't know. I've tried to research it. I can't figure it out. I did some research. She never talked about what, at least that I found, what it means. There was a dancer, apparently, in Mexico of Chinese descent in the 30s and 40s who did a lot of vaudeville dancing. She was very mysterious, exotic, said silky smooth and very quiet, and she was kind of a star in that world. She was also in a couple movies in the 40s, which I have not found. But then, when she was about maybe 28 years old, she was in this love triangle and was shot to death. So there's a lot of mystery with her, and of course that legend has been quite something. Anyway, I don't know if this piece is about her or not. I guess it should be, but I don't really know. What you'll find in this piece is there's also a salsa basis, and there's kind of a rhythm going on. It doesn't stay the same, but sometimes it's in one finger, sometimes in the top, sometimes in the bottom, sort of throughout. And then as that goes on, there's small little snippets of kind of a salsa going on, like maybe a dance. And then it disappears, and it comes back in a different form. It's very modern, but you recognize those spots. And then finally, towards the end, it gets pretty big, and there's maybe 10 seconds of it, and then it sort of stops. And then the last part of the piece, the last couple minutes of it, are just this ostinato, the rhythm we talked about in the bass, played in the bottom. Then there's a new thing in the top that's played over and over again. And then, I guess this is my problem, there's one in the middle, too. You go, okay. Well, try to work that out. But anyway, it's kind of, to me, this piece is more about time passing than anything else. You're coming, maybe the band is coming towards you, you hear little bits of it, and then it gets closer and closer. Then it gets there, and all of a sudden it's going away. And, or maybe it's a dream. Or maybe it's something about Sui Muy Ki. I don't really know. So you can use your imagination. If you've got an idea that seems to work afterwards, let me know. I'd like to hear some more ideas about it. So here are Sui Muy Ki, then Tumbao, and then Troubled Water. for some reason, during that, I was thinking about something about Beethoven as we come back and end with him, and about pianos again. And you'll be glad that things aren't the same as they were in his day. There apparently was a concert or concerts where they would put 3 pianos out, and Beethoven would start his concert, and the goal was he would finish the concert before the 3rd piano was broken. They were made out of wood. They were that, no iron cast frame inside. So we've come a long way since then. We come back to Beethoven, and it's really interesting because what I played at first is what we consider Beethoven's early period, when he was in his 20s. Then he had a middle period of time where he wrote different kinds of music, including the Fifth Symphony, that big heroic time period for him. And then, after a while, he started what we call his late period. And this piece was written around 1810, so it's really not that much farther along than the first period, but he changed so much. Of course, he was completely deaf in most of this time, and long before this piece was written. But I guess one of the reasons why I think he's one of the most, if not the most important composer of all time, is that he not only changed our expectation of what music can do, and he brought us into the Romantic era, but he changed how we are supposed to listen to music completely. And he elevated music to the same level as poetry, art, and all the other arts. He made it so. He just created this kind of music so that you don't just listen to it for entertainment, but you almost have to listen to it, reflect on it, go back and listen to it again, and it's something you do throughout your life. It was that kind of music that he wrote. This piece, what we call Opus 109, pianists know it well, is one of his late piano sonatas. Again, he wrote it when he was probably about in his late 40s. So, late 40s is his late period. I don't know what would happen if he'd lived much longer. We would have done, I don't know what we would have called it, but would have had to find a new name for it. Anyway, it's no longer about the structure of what we call a sonata allegro. So the first movement is very, almost sounds improvisatory in many ways. It's built on little elements that he uses in different ways. It's quite beautiful, but it's not necessarily all melodic, if you can think about that. But it's something just for you to listen for. It's just a really wonderful, fairly short first movement. The second movement is just kind of a fast one, more typical of what he did. And then this third movement is a theme and variations, how he ends the piece. The theme he uses is pretty much like a Bach chorale, very simple, very beautiful. And then he goes through the series of variations that some look forward into the future, very romantic, almost modern. Some go backwards to Bach-like, like a fugue, things like that. And then the last movement is this crazy sort of variation where he just works himself into almost an ecstatic expression of ecstasy. No other way to put it. It's something you can't describe, but just listen to. And then he ends with the chorale again. But this time you heard the chorale at the beginning. You hear the chorale at the end, but you've been through an ordeal. You've been through a transformation in between. So I hope you feel some of that. To me, this is some of the greatest music ever written. It's a privilege to be able to play it, and I hope you enjoy Beethoven Opus 109.